Welcome back. Well, in the past, Sayyid Imam worked closely with Osama bin Laden's second-in-command, Ayman al-Zawahiri. At one time, the doctor was Imam's deputy at Egyptian Islamic Jihad. It's reported the two worked together for several years. Some of Imam's previous writings have helped form Al-Qaeda's fighting ideology, leaving some wondering if his new work could leave a global impact. In Cairo, Diyar Ashwana, political Islam and Islamist groups expert at Al-Haram Center for Political and Strategic Studies. In Washington, D.C., John Esposito, founding director of Prince Al-Walid bin Talal Center for Muslim-Christian Understanding at Georgetown University. And in London, Abdul Wahab Al-Afandi, a senior research fellow at the Center for the Study of Democracy, University of Westminster. Welcome back, gentlemen. Let me ask you, John Esposito, in Washington, D.C., do you think that Ayman al-Zawahiri and Osama bin Laden should be now concerned for the future of the organization after the revision now of Sayyid Imam?
The realities of it are that we're going to continue to have both the conditions that foster terrorism as well as those who see this as the only way that they can go. I think that what Zawahiri and bin Laden are going to be concerned about is that, and I think that they've been concerned about this in recent months, is that this is going to raise a lot of questions. It won't eliminate recruiting, but it will raise a lot of questions among those who are already committed to terrorism, but also those who may think about it, because it's not simply a matter of having, if you will, some mainstream muftis who are saying or denouncing terrorism. Now you have somebody who has very strong, legitimate credentials and is raising questions, including questions that actually go right to Islam and Islamic law itself, that are irrefutable. So one can question the motives behind this statement, but the reality of it is that some of these arguments do stand on their own.
Yeah, as John Esposito said, this is not an ordinary man. This is, in fact, the man who formed the first jihadist cell in Egypt in 1969. Very charismatic, described as Ayman al-Zawahiri's mentor, very close to Osama bin Laden when he went to Peshawar. And he was thought to be the man who planted several commanders around Osama bin Laden, like Abu Hafs, who was killed in 2001. Do you think that half of Al-Qaeda members in Afghanistan who are from Al-Jihad, Islamic Jihad, after the merger in 1998, would now listen to their leader?
I think yes. I think that at least they are already disrupted by what Sayyid Imam said. As perhaps I said in the other comment, Zawahiri himself was touched and tried to respond to Sayyid Imam Sharif. The 3 last days, I remarked in the chatting area in the site of the jihadists in the internet that in the first day they put, some of them they put the first phase of this book, and we have many comments. Many of them were against, some were they with, but in the last 2 days, the directions of all these sites decided to stop all the debates about the book. You cannot find today and yesterday any kind of comments about the book. It's a new strategy from Al-Qaeda reflecting their fears from real debate about Sayyid Imam Sharif. It's a case not only of Ayman al-Zawahiri, who knows very well the weight of Sayyid Imam, enough to say that until last year, we had many tapes in the internet. I found myself yesterday 19 records by one of the Egyptian members of Al-Qaeda explaining Al-Umda fi I'dad al-Udda, the guide for the preparation for the members of Al-Qaeda. They had not tell Sayyid Imam, they had not real theoretical, if you want, base for their action, for their terrorism. Ayman al-Zawahiri is a man of action. Osama bin Laden never was a thinker. Then they are searching, they didn't find except Sayyid Imam Sharif. And then now, when Sayyid Imam and his leaders and his colleagues left them, it's a real problem for Al-Qaeda and its members.
Well, Osama bin Laden released an audio statement in October this year. He chastises the jihadis in Iraq and urges Mujahideen leaders to unite under one banner.
To my brothers fighting in Iraq, while you deserve praise for your open hearts and modesty, you can also stand to be rebuked and advised. You fulfilled your duty, a great duty which very few are able to undertake, which is to push back the enemy. But some of you have been lax in fulfilling another duty, which is also a great duty. That is to unite your ranks into one, as God desires.
Bin Laden's tape follows earlier calls for unity in jihadi ranks. In July 2005, Al-Qaeda's number 2 Ayman al-Zawahiri wrote to the then leader of Al-Qaeda's in Iraq, Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi, before his death. In the letters, Zawahiri urged restraint amongst the jihadists, warning of the negative consequences that Zarqawi's campaign was having on Muslim opinion, namely the video tapings of beheadings of hostages and fighter attacks against Shia Muslims. Then going back to our guest, Al-Afandi in London, let me ask you this question. Would it be naive to assume at this time that fighters in Afghanistan and Iraq would now listen to their mentor and lay down their arms, turn what has been described as a very somber, painful chapter in the Islamic and Arab world?
I think he will not have direct influence. I must say that, for example, in his book Al-Umda, he has written in the introduction that he has written this book because the brothers in the camps needed guidance. So the brothers were already in the camps when he wrote the books. They were not there because of his book. But I'm sure that when Ayman al-Zawahiri and Osama bin Laden, whose continuation is still a bizarre phenomenon, Al-Qaeda itself is a bizarre phenomenon that should have died down a long time ago had it not been for Iraq, they were expressing worry about what we have seen in the debacle now faced by Al-Qaeda in Iraq. They have serious problems there because they have come into clashes. So I think the facts on the ground are going to be more decisive in Al-Qaeda's demise than the mere writings of this man. I think we can give them more value than they have. And he himself, as I said, is tiptoeing around this issue of authority, trying to say that I don't have a fatwa, I am not. But I think what he indicates gingerly is that the Islamists, the violent Islamists who have been in jihad, whether in Al-Qaeda or jihad or Jama'ah, are finding out common sense at last. I mean,
exactly what he has been what he's been laying out.
Yes.
John, we have been following for the recent days what has been described as a new trend in Iraq, which is the slowing down of attacks against civilians. Do you think this is a direct consequence of the revisions by Ayman Sayyid Sharif?
I don't think it's a direct consequence, but I certainly think that, again, this provides a kind of credible critique that will get people to reflect on what's actually been happening and whether or not it is productive or counterproductive. And I think also we don't want to underestimate that when you really have excessive uses of terror or violence, as occurred in Egypt with the attacks in Luxor and other places, it alienates often segments of the population that may have not been involved, but have been sort of sympathetic or empathetic. And I think increasingly, people who are both in regions where they are the victims or who are looking at those regions are more and more reflecting on what really is the long-term effectiveness of the kind of indiscriminate acts of violence and terrorism that we've seen, and is it worthwhile? And when you then factor in that you've got somebody with his credentials who's also arguing now and using Islam to legitimate his new position and saying that what he did was not really authentic, I think that has a certain kind of persuasiveness. But I agree with Abdul Wahab, there's not going to be a complete sort of transformation taking place. Well,
jailhouse revisions is not something new to the political life in Egypt. Let me ask you this question, gentlemen, very briefly. We are talking about Al-Qaeda, an organization that has franchised in an impressive way during the last 10 years and has shown ability to regenerate despite all the setbacks. Is this something that could now be a setback to Al-Qaeda? Diya.
Yes, I think, yes. So I have the chance to see the document, the whole document of Sayyid Imam as a consultant of the two papers publishing it. And a part of this document speaking about the internal affairs of Arab countries and Egypt especially. For this document, it is not only to organize or reorganize the jihad against the invaders coming from outside, but also to rationalize and reorganize the jihad, or so-called jihad, against the rulers, against the governments in the Arab world, criticizing many types happened already in the past. Then I think that this document, not only by Sayyid Imam, but also by people who signed it with him, we speak about hundreds of people who already fought in the past in the two levels, national and international, by adopting now such judgments and fatwas forbidding any kind of fighting inside or outside, it will affect, I think, not only Egyptians but also other jihadists around the world.
Al-Wahab al-Afandi in London, what kind of impact on Al-Qaeda from Casablanca to Indonesia?
Well, I think, as I said, the text itself is mind-bogglingly naive, as it was the other text he has written. But their appeal to these groups do not rely on the text itself, but to networks they build. So we'll have to see how this will impact. As John, I think, rightly said, recruitment is going to be slowed down, certainly.
And then I'll have
new people, yes,
I'll have to leave you there. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, for your contribution. Diyar Ashwan in Cairo, John Esposito in Washington, D.C., and Abdul Wahab Al-Afandi in London. Thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We welcome your comments and suggestions. Please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Goodbye for now.